So the next section of my 101 SharePoint usability tips is performance, accessibility, and compatibility. And you might be asking, well, why do we need to worry about these? Well, the reality is that these can actually affect user experience as well. So let's take performance first and say, well, the reality is not every user has patience. So people don't always wait around if things are having slow performance, if there's some kind of unpredictable, if there's some kind of issue that's happening there, people may not wait around. Well, what's the consequence of that? Well, actually, we have some very common things that we see with that. One is what we call the double click. Otherwise, somebody clicks a button, they're expecting something to happen, and it doesn't happen in the timely manner like they would expect. It doesn't go to the new page, you don't see a spinning wheel, whatever it might be, and they click it again. And instead of actually clicking it and it just happening for the first time, now this is actually adding another element to whatever the transaction is. So maybe you're doing a double entry into a list, or you're committing to e-commerce transactions. There's a lot of scenarios in this, and this is something that we've had to deal with the internet for a really, really long time. The other thing is sometimes people will miss important elements. I've seen a lot through my usability testing that if a page loads really slow and you have somebody and they're trying to complete some kind of task, they'll probably not wait for the entire page to load, and they'll actually move on to the next segment or click out of there because they don't have the patience, and they may miss something important. But even more than that, it just may delay overall progress. If people are having this issue and you actually want them to be finishing some type of task in a timely manner and the pages are loading slow and everything's moving at a crawl, the reality is that's not going to happen. So looking at it from the accessibility side, truthfully, not every user can use all 5 senses. So there's people out there that have different issues with different types of senses and we have to think about that. So accessibility issues, first and foremost, can alienate your users. So if pages aren't accessible, you're going to have a segment of your user population that is not going to be able to perform what they're trying to do as well as others. So especially if you're a government agency where you actually have mandates around that, but even if you're not, you want to be thinking about doing some things to actually try and make your overall site more accessible for those that use screen readers, that use adaptive type technologies. And the reality is non-accessible technology keep our users from grasping the full experience. So a lot of times we'll see in government websites part of their page meets accessibility standards and the other part doesn't. So this part can maybe be read by a screen reader, but this part over here cannot. And so it keeps those users from actually having the full experience of your website. And the reality is misunderstood or inaccessible information can really cause poor implemented business processes. So it could be something that missed, they could miss a step in a process. There's just a lot of different scenarios in there. So looking at accessibility from a SharePoint standpoint is actually very important. Now SharePoint actually, Microsoft throughout the last few versions has taken a lot of strides in this area, but there's still some areas that needs work, and we're going to talk about a few of those in this section. And lastly, we talk about compatibility. Well, the reality is not every user works with Internet Explorer. People have mobile devices, they have iPads, they have Zunes, they have tablets, they have different browsers from Internet Explorer to Firefox to Safari to Chrome to whatever it is. And this can actually affect user performance. So page presentation a lot of times is not the same, and that's the biggest thing, is what might work on Internet Explorer one way may work in Firefox and Safari other ways, and in Chrome another way. And so you've actually got to look at that. Forms acting unpredictably, a lot of times things that work in a particular form in a particular browser, you need to be looking at the other browsers to see how they are. And users interact differently. So sometimes the way you might do something, say in Internet Explorer on a desktop versus the way that you'd work with Safari on your iPad are very different experiences. So overall, the whole point is that performance and accessibility issues and compatibility issues can be very, very important to the overall user experience.